Yes, delighted to say we're joined by highly esteemed consultant gastroenterologist, London-based consultant gastroenterologist, Professor Shahid Khan. Today we're going to talk about the role of the liver in our digestive system. So, Professor Khan, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for the topic. And well, we'll jump into the questions then. The first one, Professor Khan, what is the role of the liver in our digestive system, and how does diet affect the liver function?
Thank you, Connor, for the kind words. Just to say, I'm a gastroenterologist who has a subspecialty interest in liver disease, so I'm a hepatologist as well,
Oh,
and that's the angle I'm looking at this. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the British Liver Trust, who have done a really brilliant diet and liver disease advice sheet, and I point listeners and viewers to the British Liver Trust, the charity which provides really great useful information, and much of my content is from their advice sheet as well as my own experience. So
excellent.
the first question, Connor, you said was, what is the role of the liver in the digestive system, and how does the diet affect liver function? So the liver is a really important organ. It's one of the largest organs, if not the largest organ in the body after the skin, I guess. And it's just under the diaphragm on the right hand side in the upper abdomen. And you just have one liver, so you need to look after it. And it's essentially your body's, it's like an energy warehouse for the body. It's a factory that does hundreds and hundreds of jobs that are crucial to life, really. So, for example, the liver makes bile, this green fluid that is important to help break down food. So the liver makes bile, it flows down the bile ducts stored in the gallbladder, and then goes from there into the intestine, small intestine, to help break down food, and also biles away that toxins, internal and external toxins, are cleared from the body, broken down in the liver, cleared in the bile. The liver also has an important role in processing food after it's been digested. And for example, it stores carbohydrates, fats, minerals, vitamins, including iron. Vitamin D has an important role in vitamin D, making vitamin D, just as the skin has. The liver also controls your energy balance because it stores carbohydrates and can convert to energy as needed. So it controls your energy balance. As I've said, it filters and removes chemicals, toxins, and drugs, and most external chemicals are processed by the liver and broken down, and any toxic things are detoxified by the liver and the biliary system. Liver also makes proteins, such as albumin, a very important protein to keep fluid in the blood vessels, and also to help clear toxins. And the liver makes clotting factors. And it also has a number of other important processes in regulating things like water balance and hormones. So if your liver's healthy, a well-balanced diet can reduce your risk of developing liver disease in the future, primarily, I guess, by preventing damaging buildup of fat. And a fatty liver is one of the commonest liver conditions that we see globally nowadays. And so if you have a healthy liver, maintaining it is important by having a well-balanced diet and preventing fatty liver. And if someone has liver disease already pre-existing, then there are some dietary considerations that are important. Some of these might depend on the type of liver disease. We can come on to talk to that later. And people who have very advanced liver disease may need to change their intake of certain food types depending on their condition. So in which case they would often require specialist dietary advice, but we can go on to talk about that side of things later.
Excellent, Professor Khan. That's a very insightful overview of, well, the importance overall of the liver. It has a lot of responsibilities, actually. I didn't know that the liver was so essential to the body's functioning. So that's very
Right.
important. And I suppose, yes, diet, we'll definitely touch on that for sure. And
Mm.
then, yeah, it leads us nicely to the next question then, Professor Khan. What are some foods that are beneficial for our liver health, and how do they work?
So the important thing really is to have a well-balanced diet. There's no one food type that is
Okay.
ideal for the liver. It's all about having a well-balanced diet. And also, I know we're not, this isn't really about exercise, but exercise is very important, not just for, there are clear health benefits from a well-balanced diet and exercise. Things like, obviously your cardiovascular health, your blood pressure, healthy
Mhm.
bones, healthy mind, etc. But the liver really, and I don't think people really appreciate how important a well-balanced diet and exercise is for the liver. And of course, alcohol in moderation. We can move on to alcohol later and talk specifically about that. But alcohol in moderation, but a well-balanced diet. Um, it's probably a good idea just to talk about um, cirrhosis, which is when the liver becomes severely damaged. There's many causes of cirrhosis. Cirrhosis means scarring of the liver due to ongoing damage, and that can be from multiple causes: liver diseases, alcohol, fatty liver. There's multiple things that can cause cirrhosis. And when someone develops cirrhosis, the liver doesn't store glycogen very well. Glycogen is a carbohydrate which needs is needed by the body for its energy demands. And if someone develops cirrhosis, then they might need more energies, more protein in their diet. Otherwise, people can get malnourished and muscle wasting. And it's estimated that maybe 20% of people with cirrhosis are malnourished. And once, if someone has cirrhosis and the liver eventually starts to fail, then up to 50% can be malnourished. So they'll need to modify their diet, make sure they're getting enough carbohydrate, protein, fat, vitamins, and minerals. So if someone's got liver disease, then they need professional advice, but they're going to need more, particularly protein, vitamins, minerals. And if someone's already got a healthy liver, to keep it healthy, they need a well-balanced diet and exercise and alcohol in moderation.
Fantastic, Professor Khan. Yeah, exercise, that's very interesting. I suppose a lot of people mightn't have thought of that before, that exercise can really benefit the whole, I suppose, digestive workings of the body as well. Does exercise really keep...
Absolutely. Mm.
Mm.
No,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
fantastic. And I suppose in terms of meal times, then, is there any kind of recommendation for how long you should wait before exercising? Or when is the ideal time to exercise, I suppose, before eating or after eating?
Uh, Probably best to exercise after some light food, not a heavy meal.
Okay.
And in terms of time of day, um, well, it's better to exercise any time of day is better than not exercising.
Yeah.
But if you are able to regularly get some exercising, it's probably most people would find it's more effective if they do it in the morning and they feel energized for the rest
Okay.
of the day. And you've had a good night's rest, and you're more likely to do it that way rather than at the end of the working day. Um, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Professor Khan. That's great to know now. Well, just for our digestive health overall, which is great. And then our next question, then, Professor Khan, how does yes, that's it exactly. Yes, touching on alcohol. How does alcohol consumption affect the liver health? And what are the recommended guidelines for safe drinking?
Okay. So alcohol consumed in excess can certainly damage the liver. So the liver breaks down alcohol. As I said, the liver has a key role in breaking down chemicals, and alcohol is essentially a chemical. And so the liver breaks it down so that it can be removed from the body and processed and metabolized. The process of breaking down the alcohol in the liver creates substances, the breakdown products of alcohol, that can be even more harmful than the actual alcohol itself. And in large amounts, these breakdown products from alcohol can damage the liver cells. So every time your liver filters or metabolizes some alcohol, some of your liver cells actually die. Now, that sounds quite dramatic, but the liver regenerates and develops new cells all the time. So it's not usually a big issue, but prolonged alcohol misuse, drinking too much over many years can affect the liver's ability to regenerate. And so drinking too much alcohol over a long period of time can cause alcohol-related liver disease, sometimes called ARLD. And the first stage of that damage is the buildup of fat within the liver. So people can be slim and but still have a fatty liver if they drink too much. That's the first stage of the damage. If excess alcohol continues to be consumed, then the damage progresses. About a third of people with alcohol-related fatty liver can develop inflammation of the liver. So the liver becomes inflamed and irritated. That's called alcoholic hepatitis. And then ongoing fat accumulation and inflammation in the liver can eventually lead to scarring. So the formation of scar tissue, not dissimilar to scarring on the skin if you injure your skin. And the scarring, when it happens inside an organ, is called fibrosis. And so when the scarring or fibrosis becomes severe, that's what cirrhosis is. There's different grades of fibrosis. The most severe grade is cirrhosis. When scar tissue, it starts to replace healthy cells. And so someone can have cirrhosis and actually feel no symptoms. And that's why liver disease is called the silent disease, because this process of scarring or fibrosis, it doesn't happen in days or weeks. It normally happens over years and years, if it happens. And because inside the liver, there's no nerve fibers, unlike your skin's quite rich in sensory nerve fibers. Any damage irritates your skin, you feel it, right? You feel it
Absolutely.
straight away. And you sort of have to, because your skin is like your first line of defense to protect your body, right? So it's got to be sensitive to anything that's injurious to it, right? But
Yeah.
inside the liver, Connor, there's no nerve fibers. So this fatty liver inflammation, irritation, and scarring can happen with no symptoms at all. And then even when someone gets cirrhosis, where there's scar tissue throughout the liver, patients can initially have no symptoms. But eventually, if someone has cirrhosis and the cause of that damage is ongoing and persisting, then eventually the liver will start to fail. And that's when the symptoms become evident, such as feeling unwell, weak, confusion, jaundice, going yellow in the eyes and the skin, nausea, internal bleeding, vomiting blood, swollen tummy, fluid retention, bruising, loss of appetite, itching, muscle cramps. And that's when those signs and symptoms occur, that's really quite late in the day, which is why we say liver disease is the silent disease. Abstinence from alcohol can often result in complete reversal of liver damage. So I'm talking about alcohol-related liver damage. And in terms of people who have liver disease from alcohol, the single most important dietary change, dietary in inverted commas, is to stop drinking. And even if the damage is extensive and can't entirely be reversed, stopping drinking in that scenario is still beneficial and can definitely improve outcomes. The other important thing, while we're on the topic of alcohol, is that sometimes I think people forget that alcohol has a lot of calories.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so alcohol has, for those who want specifics, alcohol provides about 7 calories per gram. So
Wow.
a bottle of spirit can provide 1,500 calories. A glass of wine, a few hundred calories. So people who consume large amounts of alcohol, they essentially giving themselves a lot of calories as well. So that might put them off eating food. They might feel less need to eat food because they're getting a lot of their calories from the alcohol. So that means that that could have an effect on their diet, and they end up eating less calories from healthy sources like protein, carbohydrate. So people with liver disease from alcohol would be advised to ensure that they're getting enough calories from alternative sources, high protein, high calorie diet, etc. to compensate for the energy lost when alcohol is stopped.
Fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
very, very
Uh,
interesting about alcohol. Yeah.
and it's estimated that around 15 to 20% of people who drink excessively will develop cirrhosis. So not everyone who drinks excessively will develop cirrhosis, but it's important to say that excess alcohol is not just harmful to the liver. So not everyone who drinks a lot will get cirrhosis, but those who don't get cirrhosis may get other problems like osteoporosis, weak bones, can be some brain damage, pancreatitis, inflammation and damage to the pancreas is another thing that alcohol can cause. So, um, it's important to bear in mind that even though many people can drink alcohol without getting cirrhosis, there are other non-liver health issues important that alcohol excess can cause. And you asked me about what recommended safe limits.
Yeah.
So, according to the British Liver Association in the UK, what we recommend now is to drink no more than 14 units a week, and to aim for at least 2 or 3 consecutive alcohol-free days each week. So 2 or 3
Okay.
days during the week where there's no alcohol, and overall in the week, no more than 14 units. And a unit, what's a unit? So a unit would be small glass of wine or half a pint, for example, or a small shot. Large glass of wine, a pint would be 2 beer. It would be 2 units. So it may not seem like a lot when you count it up, but actually that is a pretty safe limit, as recommended, and that's for both men and women.
For both. Okay, that's fantastic. I suppose, yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot, but then it does add up, and it's great to be aware, especially, heading towards Christmas and well, any time of the year, it's
Yeah,
important for people to know per week.
yeah.
And
Oh, sorry, I just made a note here about, I was talking to you about alcohol causing calorie. I just
yes.
found a note I'd made earlier for the interview that just give you an example. So, uh,
Oh, fantastic.
a can of 5% beer has 129 calories. So a
Oh, wow.
can of beer, average 5% beer is 129 calories. A glass of wine, 175 ml glass of wine, has about 158 calories.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
And by comparison, a Cadbury's mini roll has 115 calories.
Wow. Okay.
And a can of Coca-Cola has 139 calories. So the alcohol is a source of, empty, what you call empty in inverted commas calories, is in that non-nutritional calories, if you know what I'm saying. And that leads
Fantastic.
to unhealthy weight gain as well. Yeah.
Wow, very interesting, Professor Khan. I mean, I definitely did not know that now. I suppose eating sweets or chocolate might not even be as much in terms of calories as a simple glass of wine, which is actually, wow, it's fascinating and great to be aware of, that people avoid excessive alcohol consumption. That's very good to know.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Professor Khan. And then, well, our question four then is, I suppose you touched on the alcohol-related fatty liver disease. What are the other most common liver diseases, and how can diet help prevent them or manage them?
Yes. So as I've said, liver disease is when something irritates the liver over time and causes scarring and leads to chronic long-term liver disease. So in terms of specific liver diseases, so there are several types of liver disease, which I'll touch on. Let me where to start? There's probably yeah. Let's talk about. We've spoken at length about alcohol, so we can move on from there. Another cause of chronic liver disease, and when I say chronic, I mean this concept that there's a condition that causes ongoing liver damage over many years. One of the causes is autoimmune hepatitis. So autoimmune hepatitis is something we don't understand why it happens, but basically in autoimmune hepatitis, the body's immune system in the liver attacks its own cells. And people can get autoimmune disease in any organ. You can get autoimmune disease in the kidneys, in the lung, in your nerves, in your muscles. So most specialists will see autoimmune disease within their own specialty. And it, certainly as liver specialists, we see autoimmune disease in the liver, autoimmune hepatitis. We don't know what causes it, but essentially you get antibodies, your own immune system makes antibodies, attacks your own liver cells, which results in inflammation and irritation, which can again lead to the scarring, the fibrosis, and eventually the cirrhosis. There are specific treatments for autoimmune hepatitis that are well established and successful treatments that can manage the condition. But again, with autoimmune hepatitis, the important thing in terms of the diet is to have a well-balanced diet. May need to increase energy and protein intake. And one of the key treatments for autoimmune hepatitis is steroids, which is quite effective at damping down the inflammation. But steroids can increase appetite and can lead to weight gain. So one has to be aware of that, be forewarned about that. So if someone is needing steroids for autoimmune hepatitis, then they need to avoid calorie-rich foods, including things like sugar, sweets, cakes, biscuits, carbohydrate-heavy foods. Stick to low-fat milk, for example, low-fat spreads. Higher protein intake rather than carbohydrate, for example. Yeah, so that's autoimmune hepatitis. There's another condition called hemochromatosis, which is a genetic condition you may have heard of. And in hemochromatosis, the body's ability to regulate its iron levels doesn't work, and it's a genetic condition which can run in families, and the result is that there's an over accumulation of iron. So normally the body is really amazing at maintaining the levels of everything: iron, magnesium, phosphate, sodium, potassium, all these important things. The body's really, and many, many more. The body's really good at regulating the level you need to maintain good function. But in hemochromatosis, the iron control goes out the window basically, and that results in excess accumulation of iron in several areas of the body, including the liver. And again, the iron accumulation over time can lead to fibrosis, scarring, fibrosis, inflammation, and cirrhosis. Again, hemochromatosis, if we know that someone has hemochromatosis, that can be treated quite effectively. And there are established treatments to help with that. The main treatment of which is venesection, so bloodletting every now and then to reduce iron. But people who have hemochromatosis may be advised to have to avoid supplements or extra vitamins that contain iron because they don't need that. If they've got too much vitamin C, that can increase iron absorption. And again, with any liver disease, particularly hemochromatosis, to keep alcohol intake to a minimum, as alcohol can also affect iron absorption and accelerate liver damage. The other big liver disease, I guess, probably globally now, and increasingly we're seeing all over the world, is non-alcohol related fatty liver disease, sometimes called MASLD, metabolic associated steatotic liver disease, which is a bit of a mouthful. But this condition is when excess fat accumulates in the liver, and it's not due to alcohol. And so, as I said before, Connor, alcohol excess initially leads to fatty liver, and then progresses in some people. In terms of non-alcoholic fatty liver, or MASLD, there are a number of well-established risk factors, and that includes being overweight, obesity, having high cholesterol and triglyceride levels or high blood lipids, having diabetes, a resistance to internal insulin from many conditions, for example, polycystic ovaries, underactive thyroid. So these are the well-established risk factors for getting excess fat in the liver. And this is now probably the commonest cause of people having having abnormal blood tests when patients are seen by GPs or in a specialist clinic for the investigation of abnormal liver tests. This is probably now the commonest cause, fatty liver. And it's estimated that 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 people, adults, actually have a fatty liver. So it's quite a thing. Now, overall, it's estimated that people with fatty liver can also, like all the other conditions I've mentioned, get that inflammation, that fibrosis, that scarring, and eventual cirrhosis, and all the things that can happen after cirrhosis. But it's estimated that only about 10% of people with fatty liver will go down that route of inflammation and cirrhosis. So 1 in 10 people with fatty liver. So 1 in 10 people may not sound like a lot. Well, only 1 in 10 people with fatty liver are at risk of getting cirrhosis down the line. But 1 in 10, of a quarter of the adult population of most of the world, actually, if you project that over the next 20 years, that's a lot of cirrhosis that you might be seeing in 20 or 30 years, right? So this is fatty liver is a really important issue for global health. Yeah, and and the majority of people with fatty liver or steatotic liver, same thing, are overweight. And the key, there aren't any specific drugs that reverse scarring or fatty liver, but weight loss is often the key. And even 5 to 10% of weight loss, if someone has a fatty liver and they're overweight, can make a big difference in the inflammation in the liver and can slow down any damage. And so again, so if someone has this condition, then and they are overweight, they're encouraged to lose weight. And again, dietary change, exercise would be key to that, rather than drugs at the moment.
Fantastic, Professor Khan. A very, very, and again, a very comprehensive overview there of the, and very interesting statistics about non-alcohol related fatty liver disease. That's very, very interesting. And you foresee that in the future it'll get maybe even worse potentially. So
yeah. There are a couple of other conditions I should probably mention just for the sake of completeness.
yes.
So globally, one of the commonest causes of chronic liver disease, fibrosis, cirrhosis is chronic long-term infection with hepatitis B or hepatitis C viruses. These are two viruses that once they infect someone in the liver, they can, in some people, persist for years and cause damage over many years and eventually lead to cirrhosis in some people. So people who have both of these viruses, if we know that someone has them, these are treatable, and there are effective treatments for both of these to prevent, hopefully, or further damage. But in patients with chronic hepatitis B or C, it would be recommended to not drink excessively, certainly to drink in no more than small amounts. Again, to try and prevent obesities, because that would be an additional hit. Because of course, someone can have more than one of these conditions. Someone might be overweight and be diabetic and have a fatty liver and be a drinker and have hepatitis B, right? So the more hits you have on the liver, the more likely you are that you'll get the fibrosis and cirrhosis, right?
Yes.
So if
More
you've got
risks.
one hit, try and avoid getting other hits on the liver. So maintaining a body weight appropriate for your height and build would be important. And the other specific condition I just want to touch on, because some of your listeners may have this or be aware of this, is something called Wilson's disease, which is relatively uncommon. But Wilson's disease is another genetic condition like hemochromatosis. Whereas with hemochromatosis, there's iron excess. With Wilson's, it's excess copper. So in Wilson's disease, there's an accumulation over time, over many years of copper, again, in several parts of the body, including the liver, but also the brain. It tends to present in younger people, children, teens, early 20s. And there are treatments. If we know that someone has this, there are treatments. Copper binders, for example, what's called copper chelating agents. And most foods contain copper, but some foods contain large amounts of copper. For example, chocolate, nuts, shellfish, mushrooms, offal. But usually treatment, if we know about this condition, when they're on treatment with copper binding agents, then usually that's quite effective, and there's not usually need to avoid these foods to an extreme degree. So there's just talking about some of the main liver conditions that cause the whole problem of cirrhosis over time.